Let me thank my colleague from Ohio for yielding, and thank him for bringing this amendment to the floor. All this amendment says is that we're going to reduce the level of spending in this bill to last year's level. That's all we're doing. We're not whacking away at everything, and I think that the gentleman has a very good point. And I do that because excessive spending makes it more difficult for us to balance the federal budget. It takes money away from our children and our grandchildren. An across-the-board cut is another way of being fair and simple, but it gets us back to last year's level. Now, the spending in these appropriation bills is one issue, but let's make sure we review the bidding on what's happened here thus far this year. In February, when the supplemental spending bill came through the CR to fund the government for this year, came through here, it had $6 billion of spending over and above the president's level. And then we had the budget come through with an additional $20 billion worth of domestic discretionary spending included in it. And then just last month we had the supplemental spending bill for Iraq and Katrina that had an additional $17 billion over and above what the president has asked for. If you look at all of that, $1.1 billion in the energy and water appropriation bill that's already passed, another $1.9 billion in this bill, you begin to add all this up, and it's real money. And at some point, somebody has to pay for it. And that's the real crux of the issue here. Most of us came here to make sure that we had a government that was affordable so that we could keep the American dream alive for our kids and theirs. And the more that we spend and the more that we mortgage their future, the harder it is for them to have the same chances in life that many of us have had. And if the spending that we've talked about isn't bad enough, if you look at the budget that my friends across the aisle passed last spring, there's no entitlement reform. My colleague and the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Roby, will soon rise and talk about the $4 billion or $4 trillion worth of debt that's accumulated over the last 6 years. We know that we have to deal with entitlements. I'm trying to help you give your speech, Mr. Roby. We have to deal with entitlements. Over the course of the 12 years the Republicans ran the House, we dealt with entitlements some 3 times. Not as often as we should have, not as aggressively as we should have, but we have made promises to ourselves, those of us who are baby boomers, promises that our kids and our grandkids can't afford. And at some point, we, as responsible stewards of our government, need to grab a hold of these entitlements and begin to change them. Several years ago, we made a modest effort, some $40 billion in entitlement reductions over 5 years, a step in the right direction. But to bring a budget out here that says we're not going to deal with entitlements for the next 5 years, I think is totally irresponsible. And so if we're serious about making sure that our kids and their kids have a real chance at the American dream, we've got to say no. The American people sent us here to make decisions about how to best spend their money. And if we just keep adding more money, guess what? We never have to make a decision. That's not what the American people expect of us. They expect of us to have a government that's affordable, that's accountable, and something that they can afford in their family budget. And I thank my colleague for yielding.